Okay, welcome ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. I'm Skaggly Bones, I'm your host. Today I want to talk about the 2x conversion. Now, most people are going to 1x. Obviously I got a 9-speed on the back, so I wanted a little bit more range, so I wanted to keep at least, even though I was running originally a 3x setup, I wanted to run a 2x. So, my original chain rings, here's the outer chain ring, and as you can see, go here, it says a 40, 30, 22, if you can read that, 40, 30, 22, okay, so this has been a pretty good group set. This is pretty light. This was one of the best. This was the best of the Alivio group sets, even though the new Alivio group sets are 10-speed. This is the only Alivio group set that they actually did a Holotech 2. So the rest of the Alivio group sets, it's only the Derailleur that has Holotech 2. The rest, Alivio, they only did for a couple years, Holotech 2, and then they went away from it because people just weren't buying it. So this one, the nice thing about it, like I said, is I could swap out to the Derailleur stuff or the XT, and I'd be pretty good. So, nice, good crank arms. These are technically, they were just pretty much Derailleur crank arms that they put, and they just slapped the Alivio name on it. That's pretty much all they did. Okay, so the rear derailleur is the same with this. The standard Alivio. This is right before. Or at the time they've been doing the clutch mech. This just is not a clutch mech. So once you get down this far, you're not going to have a clutch mech. So you go up to the Derailleur, but you can find a clutch mech for probably about $40 nowadays on Amazon. $39 for the low-end Derailleur clutch mech. Of course, you're not going to get bearing jockey wheels in that, and that's what you're paying for when you go up to the other. I think it's what, $59, $60 in the next level up, which is the XT, and then you're going to get not only your clutch mech, shadow mech, clutched, and then you're going to get some bearings in there with the seal cartridge bearings in the jockey wheels. Now, I'm not too concerned about that. It's not a big deal for me. So probably next, like I said, after we get the suspension set up, maybe later I'll probably put on that. Like right now, this is a little loose. It would bounce a lot, but with this chain tensioner, works pretty good. And this chain tensioner, it is an MRP Mountain Racing Products, phenomenal company in America. Great stuff, very adjustable. You loosen up this Allen bolt, and this slides back and forth. I slid it up all the way because it puts the most tension, keeps the most tension closest to the chain ring here. Also, when this shifts, it's kind of hard to see in there, but there's actually two jockey wheels. So when it's farther back here and you downshift or upshift, it won't always jump to the second jockey wheel unless you start shifting in the back. So having this closer this way, it tends to shift a little bit better. Okay, down a jockey wheel or up a jockey wheel. Okay, so it's extremely quiet. It doesn't have a lot of the noise as the old roller guards do, so it's pretty good. The only bit of rubbing, there is a little bit of noise though when you shift down to the next cog down, because you have the kind of this bash guard. Every once in a while you get a little bit of a sound on it, which is pretty much almost the same thing as and it depends which gear you're in. So when you're in your upper gears, it's gonna do it more in the middle or lower gears on that small gear. So on the small gear, it's not so bad, but it's almost the same sound you get here with the derailleur anyway. So I don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. It's not gonna really wear on the bash guard. The bash guard is pretty well built. So we got this chain tensioner bash guard. We have an outer bash guard that's coming, but for right now, this is what I have on there. So this chain tensioner, chain guide, whatever you want to call it, it has full bash guard at the bottom, which is really nice. Kind of prevents chain from going too far over. And also, as you can see, you have this back chain block, so the chain won't actually ever drop off. So that's pretty nice. You don't really have this piece anymore on your chain ring anymore. So this is what prevented the chain from coming off and getting caught back here in the crank arm. You're not going to have that anymore, but it should never happen now with the chain tensioner. So you shouldn't have that problem. Okay. Now the big setup thing is, so I took this off. You always want to remove your outer chain ring. You always want to use, when you're converting, you want to always use the middle gear and the lower gear when you're converting. So I'm using a 30 tooth and a 22 tooth, which is not too bad. It could be a little bit bigger. I could get like a 36 tooth and a 24 tooth, but I have a smaller gear set here in the back. Like I said, this was a couple-year-old group set, and people weren't using, especially with the 3x, they weren't using the big 40 tooth. So until I go with like a big 40 tooth, this should be fine. Okay, so this works pretty good. I've gone up some pretty heavy hills with the smaller guy and the big chain ring back here, or the big cassette in the back, and it's normally pretty good. The nice thing with this is it shifts nice up the whole set without actually doing anything super crazy and taking a while to actually shift into the largest cog in the back. So it works pretty good. I've been pretty happy with it. Okay, one other setup thing that you got to be aware with is the front derailleur. So one of the things you want to do is when you are set up and you kind of have this to where you don't want to overshift. If you overshift, this is actually you're gonna push the chain off, and then you actually would get the chain stuck over here. So there is a possibility of that happening. Now it's harder to do because you have the chain tensioner down here. It just makes it extremely hard to do it because the chain doesn't bend that far over. But it still tries to do it, and you could still lose the chain if you weren't careful. So what you want to do is, once you get the chain on here and the center, this is in the center position here, both here and on your handle, or on your shifter here, you want to go ahead and set your high limit screw until what you do is you actually look back underneath here, and I don't know if you guys can see it. Back underneath here, there's actually, you can look underneath and actually see where the high limit screw is, and you want to screw it in. You're not going to unscrew it, but you're going to screw it into the actual high limit screw touches there's like a bar under there. Okay, so there's a piece of metal under there that the high limit screw comes in contact with, preventing it from actually being able to be pulled out any farther. Okay, so how this type of front mech works is cable comes down, and it the spring tension pulls this down, and what happens if you release all tension, when this is down, I'll try to show you here, folks. So when the cable pulls on it, what it does is the swing arm comes up, pushing this out. Okay, so most forward mechs or front mechs, they actually sit up higher and they swing up. Okay, this one is a down swinging mechanism, and the reason Shimano came up with this is it allows the clamp to be a lot lower on this. So as you can see here, it's not as low as it could go. I could put this lower and I could get this to be down farther, but I'm not going to adjust the front mech until I actually get this front bash guard on. Okay, so when I try to push this into a higher gear or a bigger cog, actually what happens is the cable actually is pulling on this here, and it's swinging this arm up, and over, okay? So when you release tension on it, this actually swings in and swings down, okay? So once it does that, when you drop it, you want to adjust then your low limit screw, and that's how you adjust it. So you want to make sure that this is set so this cannot go out any farther. And as you can see here, that's as far as it goes, and it goes just far enough to touch the chain, but it doesn't actually move the chain. Okay, now some people are like, well, you should adjust it. Some people think you should adjust it so I can't even press on this at all, but you're never going to be able to do that. There's absolutely no way to adjust it that tight. In fact, I have the high limit screw turned in about as far as we're going to go at all. Okay, so that's about as far as it will go. As far as that's concerned, this still shifts pretty good, even though this is up higher. If you obviously get this lower, it would shift probably a little quicker. The only problem I would have is possibly this will run into the lower bracket here. So that's kind of why I keep it there. I can probably get it down a little farther. Like I said, I don't want to adjust this anymore until I actually get a bash guard in, because I might, as you can see there, I don't have much cable left. Got maybe half to an inch, and I'm probably going to be pulling that pretty tight once I drop this. I got, looks like about an inch I can drop this down. So if it comes to that, I will probably adjust this down, and it will work. Now, one other thing too, this roller guard goes behind the bottom bracket. So because this bike is not designed for the bolt-on roller guards, a lot of the new bikes are, even the hardtails, they do design them for that, because it's very common now to use roller guards. So I was only using one spacer. This bottom bracket happens to be a 70 mil. These bottom brackets are designed for 68 to 73 mil. Okay, so you get. So what I was running, it was a single 3 mil spacer, like this. So I took the single 3 mil spacer out. I put in this chain guide here behind the bottom bracket, which makes up for that 3 mil. The problem is, though, I was getting this rubbing sound when I was spinning my crank arms, and what it is there's actually the back bolts for the second chain ring back there. They were rubbing on part of the guard, so I needed a tiny bit of spacer. So I took one of my other spacers and I filed it down really thin, but it was too much. It was too much spacing, and what happened was I was unable to lock the other crank arm onto my spindle. So that was kind of a problem. So instead of me filing this spacer down even farther, I just made some handmade spacers out of some Tupperware, cut out a spacer, so it was like maybe 2 millimeters thick, maybe 1 millimeter thick actually, and I put that on there, and that turned out perfect. So put that actually on the cup in between there, the bash guard, put the cup back on, the outer bearing, and it doesn't make any rubbing sounds. So if I can pull this off here real quick. Let's see here. 1 second, folks. Okay, we're back. Just had to reset up the camera a little bit here. So as you can see the whole thing. Roller guard here. Now, yeah, I'm going to be spinning this backwards because I don't have it on the stand. But as you can see, the only thing we're getting is noise from the clicking from the cassette. And the typical noise we would get. Even if I lift this up here, we're only getting a little bit of jockey wheel noise from the actual chain going over the plastic jockey wheel. So that's pretty much it. And then if we were to dump this into a lower gear, you get a little bit of noise there from the chain. And if you go into the lowest gear, that's pretty good. Now we can tighten the chain up a little bit if we really wanted to, but I think it's fine the way it is with the chain tensioner there. That's with it in even the smallest gear. Now I typically don't run in the smallest gear. For 90% of the time, I will run in the big gear, like so. There we go. It's not 100% perfect as far as shifting into the big gear. It works a little bit better on the road, but it doesn't do too bad. Pretty happy with it, the way it works. So, works pretty well. As you can tell, it's not too loud. Works perfectly. I've taken it on one big ride where I did some pretty big jumps where normally I'd drop the chain. I wasn't dropping it if I had it in the middle gear, the 30-tooth cog, and with this guy, but if once I have the bash guard on here, it probably wouldn't drop at all. It's just the fact that I really don't want to have to worry about that, because there's some stuff I go out and do, and this will really keep the chain in check. So it's one of the things you just want to do. Like I said, the other thing would be a clutch mech. If I got a clutch mech here, this wouldn't move at all, and all that little bit of slap you see there, all that would go away. You wouldn't get any of that at all. So those are pretty easy to get and come by. 39 bucks, get yourself a good clutch mech. So okay, folks, hopefully you guys enjoy this video where I talked about the bone by system. If you liked it, make sure you give us a thumbs up. You can come up here, you can click up here to subscribe. If you come over here, over here on the left side of the 2x chain guard, you can click on another video, and that video will take you to one of my other videos that talks about the mountain bike. So like always, keep riding.